Since the dawn of creation, some of God's creatures have wanted to be like God. Intrigued by the serpent's claim that they would be like God, Adam and Eve took a bite of fruit. In an effort to assert their will over God's, they began building a tower to make a name for themselves. Human nature and desire haven't changed since then. Many today realize there has been a sea change in Western culture's worldview. The Judeo-Christian worldview is becoming or is a minority view. Teichrib writes, "We are witnessing a titanic impact at the crossroads of religion, politics, technology, and culture. Fundamentally, it is a collision of worldviews, and we are all experiencing the shockwaves." As with the Tower of Babel, man again attempts to create the Temple of Man in the age of re-enchantment. Join the people of the book as Teichrib gives a guided tour of the game of gods.
And here we are, all ducks in a row, and talking about spiritual politics 2, part 2. So we're picking up from where we were at last week. And Carl, do you have an introductory word of wisdom?
Oh, word of wisdom. Well, that's a high ask, but
or just be a wise guy. No, wise guy. I'm from the Chicago area. Wise guy is not a good thing here.
Well, let me just simply open it up by saying this: that as you just mentioned, this is part 2. Last week we dived into some of the fundamentals of the interfaith movement, taking a look at its connection between the argument of war and peace and the cause of conflict laid at the feet of religions, and we work to debunk that. And so if you're listening to this into our little conversation this evening and you didn't watch last week's, I definitely recommend you go back and take a poke at what we talked about last week, because it really sets the foundation.
It does, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, and with that, you want me to bring your slides up there?
Yeah, for sure.
Oops, that's not the one I want. That's the one I want.
Oh, awesome. So yes, today we're going to be talking about the Parliament of the World Religions, and there are at least 1, 2, 3 others in this feed who've been to one of the parliaments, if not a number of the parliaments. So that's pretty cool. I know Jeff and I, we met at the 2018 Parliament. Was it the 2018 Parliament, Jeff?
No, here 2023.
Oh, the 2023 Parliament. Yes, yes.
I was at the 2018.
Yes, that's right. You were at the 2018, and then Don and I met each other at the 2015 Parliament. And Dr. Williams, have you been to any of the parliaments?
Not yet.
No. Yep. How about the caffeinated crew? Any of you folks come? No. Ruth? No. Okay, well.
Boy, you're missing a good time. Yeah, we were at the 1993 Parliament, which was the first one in 100 years that they had.
Yeah, that's right.
Restart.
That's right. Yeah. It was a great reset. That's what it was.
The reset. Yeah, the great reset. There you go. The great oneness reset.
That's right. So we're going to be taking a look at the Parliament experience, and we're going to tackle it as much as we can. We probably will run out of time. We may continue on until next week. It depends how the stories unfold, because there are a lot of stories from this event. Giving you a little bit of background, some of the history of the Parliament. The first one happened in 1893. We talked a little bit about that last week. Roughly 7,000 people attended, and this was really the first time that the East and the West officially met. I have, if you want to slip back to the main page here, Don, I have the double volumes.
Okay, hold on. There we go.
There we are. These are the 2-volume set of the official Parliament speeches for the 1893 Parliament. Yeah, they are well worth the time to dive into, because it really gives you a flavor of what the event was like, what the anticipation and the hope was like. The writing is quite small, so there's a lot of words in these books, that's for sure. All right, we'll flip back to the slide.
Flip back to the slides, he says.
Yes, please.
I can do that. By the way, you were at the 1893. You might want to note, and maybe you were going to say this, but just in case you weren't, that kind of the main guy, the darling of the event, was Swami Vivekananda.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and Swami Vivekananda's influence is enormous.
Yes.
He really brought his philosophy right into the mainstream. Aldous Huxley ends up grabbing hold of his philosophy. Golly, he sets up Veda schools in the U.S. and then in parts of Europe. Socialites gravitated to him. He was the rock star of the 1893 Parliament. And when you're going through some of the newspaper clippings of that era and some of the other documents that come alongside, it was evident that all he had to do was walk across the stage and he had people's attention.
Yep.
And that people were, I mean, it was like, this was the Bon Jovi. Wow, that just dated me. This is the Taylor Swift.
Oh, God.
Of his day, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Of interfaithism, you know? It's
Well,
like, yeah, here he is. This is the man.
He was the man.
There's lots of crazy stories about his interactions at the Parliament, all the stuff that circled around it. If you're going to do a study on the 1893 Parliament or the Parliament in general, you can't help but run into the sky.
Mm-hmm.
So the next one happened in 1993 in Chicago. I was not there. Don was there, and right before our little program began, he was telling us about how they watched a fist fight unfold at the Parliament. I wish I could have seen that.
Cuffs.
Yes, kumbaya.
Yeah, bam.
Yeah.
Do you want me to recite that again?
Yeah, that'd be awesome because I think
yeah.
it's important for people to see or hear. For sure.
Well, we had done an article on this, but we borrowed a piece of it for this week's blog. And what we point out is the desire for international peace was largely present, but the idea of attendees giving up their spiritual distinctives wasn't fully embraced. And it seems neither was peace and harmony, really. It wasn't long into the Parliament in 1993 that human nature kicked right in when a fight broke out between the Hindus and Muslims during the main session. The Wiccans jumped into action and started a circle dance to bring back harmony and oneness. Harmony and peace were restored with the arrival of the Chicago police, who would indeed bring order to the chaos. And it wasn't just the Muslims and Hindus that had issues. The Jewish contingent left when it was announced that the racist and anti-Semitic Louis Farrakhan would be speaking. I guess we can't expect perfect oneness overnight.
No, we can't.
Yes. That is a remarkable witness to the frailty of our human nature. Isn't it?
Starting things off with a bang.
That's right. One of the main projects that launched out of the 1893 Chicago Parliament was the global ethic. And I've got a copy of Yep, that's huge. This was absolutely a foundational document. And what's interesting is over time it shifted, the language shifted to become towards a global ethic because it's always shifting. And
well, the thing to note, which we also talk about in this week's blog, is the first one did not go over well.
That's right.
Right? Because the idea was we're going to all embrace in kumbaya and figure out how to live in a cooperative world with our respective religions. That was what the attendees came in thinking.
Right.
Hans Küng, though, had authored this with somebody else under sort of the tutelage of Robert Muller. And in it is basically saying, okay, you have to give up your distinctives so you can all have a base level of stuff that you can all agree on and not use the other stuff. And, you know, the Muslims weren't happy about that. The Jews weren't happy about that. The liberal Christians didn't really care one way or the other, but it didn't go over well generally. So they've been refining it, trying to get people to be more embracive of this idea of oneness.
Yes. Yeah. And so, I mean, this has been a multi-decade-long project already.
Right.
And it's I don't know how they're ever going to come to a conclusion on it. I don't think they've I don't think they realistically can because of that clash that we would see. Regardless of what you put in there, there's going to be a clash. Somebody's not going to be happy.
Well,
imagine that.
Everyone that does join into that show will embrace it. Those who don't embrace it won't join the program.
That's true.
Right. But the UN and the Parliament will do everything they can to marginalize evangelicals and Muslims who do believe in one true God, whatever.
Right.
So they're going to try to marginalize that. For evangelicals, it's a little easier than you might think because they're as of late especially, okay with kind of redefining Jesus to be just a friendly version of God.
Right.
Yep.
Right. He gets us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
I know. Yep. The progressive Jesus is a happy bobblehead Jesus that gives you the thumbs up.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep, exactly. So the next one that happened was in Cape Town, and they came out with a document on our guiding institutions. It's a big document, basically outlining, hey, the World Bank, IMF, our guiding international institutions get on board with the work of coming together as one neighborhood, as one order or one people. Then Barcelona, then Melbourne in 2008. And I did not have a chance to go to any of those on that side of the screen, but I was at the 2015 Salt Lake, then Toronto, and they did the virtual, which was actually a very well done platform for a virtual platform.
Oh, interesting.
And the 2023 event in Chicago, with freedom and democracy being a highlight. We'll talk a little bit about what that looks like in a few moments. So yeah, these were the ones that I attended. Don, I don't know, were you at the Melbourne one as well?
Or I was not.
Okay,
no.
so South African one?
Hansberger was there, but I wasn't there.
Yeah. Okay. The Parliament experience wasn't my first kick at the can when it came to interfaithism. As I explained last week, I was already attending interfaith events before that. But the Parliament of the World Religions, no question, is the mothership of the interfaith movement.
It is.
So when you attend the Parliament, I'm just going to give you some slides of what this is like. It's a circus. It really is. It's a cacophony of sounds.
Yeah.
It is an absolute circus of sights.
Colors,
the energy that's there, the excitement that's there, the anticipation. There's drumming, there's music, there's dancing. It's loud. The opening is loud as everybody is anticipating having this week of being together to talk about interfaithism. And then you're going to see all kinds of things pop up. These are some of the images from the 2015 Parliament. We had a Jainist temple. This was in Salt Lake City. And that's the main picture you see on the screen. The picture on the bottom corner of the screen is a lady who's taking off her shoes and has come to venerate the idol. At the top of the picture, you have Tibetan Buddhist throat singers holding a ceremony.
Yeah, I call it the bullfrog song because I can't think of what.
Yeah, that's basically what you.
And they're holding a ceremony before they start their mandala project. I think I may have a picture of the mandala as well.
Ribbit.
Yeah.
It is quite a sound. It is.
Oh,
it's pretty crazy. One of the things that struck me at the 2015 Parliament was the emphasis on the goddess that year. So they had a hallway to the goddess. I think I counted somewhere between 80 to 90 mural depictions of the goddess in various forms. Continuously, we were told that goddess, mother, the Shakti of this earth, you're a divine priestess, you are a Mother Earth walking. I heard that so many times that I was Mother Earth, or that I had Mother Earth within me, or that I was Mother Earth walking, that I was actually already kind of like, wow, okay, well, in a kind of a crass way, which bathroom do I use? Because, hey, in the age of identifying, I'm now being told I identify as the Mother Earth. And it didn't matter what your gender is, we're all part of Mother Earth. And so this was pressed on us over and over.
We have two questions.
Yes.
Is there a reason why the Parliament has been progressively meeting more often. And the follow-up is it looks like they're meeting about every 2 years now since 1993. Actually, they meet every 3 to 5 years, and that kind of depends on getting the location and having enough finances come in to pull it off.
Right.
Right.
They typically bring about 8 to 10,000 people from around the world into one place. It's a big undertaking,
Yeah, it
frankly.
Yeah,
So,
it's huge. And even the process of choosing the city is, from what I understand, it's a competitive process. And
Right.
so they are asking cities to basically say, hey, here's our plan of how we're going to host this. It's a monumental task, that's for sure. And when it screws up, and we saw how it screwed up at the 2023 Parliament,
we did.
boy, it screws up. There's all of a sudden the logistics behind it, like the ticketing and getting yourself registered. It was just an absolute gang show. One of the things you're going to see if you have the opportunity to come along with us to the Parliament is the room of the Parliament, the Red Tent Temple. And it's, I guess guys can go in it. I've been inside, but never when there's been a ritual or a ceremony. The Red Tent Temple celebrates, how do I say this? Your women, it is celebrating your sacred monthly flow.
Oh,
Yes.
figured.
Yes. It is a celebration of the divine flow experience. And if you're thinking of a feminine product commercial, this would fit the bill. So at the Red Tent Temple, at this room, they will do ceremonies and rituals. There'll be lectures. You can sit and meditate, all kinds of things. I've watched from outside in, but I've never walked in, as I said a few minutes ago, when there's actually been a ritual going on. I go in and take a bunch of pictures, and I'm like, yeah, this ain't my place.
I'm done.
More information than you wanted.
Right.
A few other just photos from the 2015 Parliament to give you a sense of how things kind of go. The Sikh community, and they have done this at all the other parliaments I've been to. The other two in-person parliaments, the Sikh community feeds everybody with langar.
The langar.
Yeah, and so you go in, and I give them credit. What an undertaking at the 2015 Parliament. There was roughly 10,000 people attending. That's a lot of mouths to feed over the course of a week.
Right, and it's all vegetarian, and it was actually it's quite good. And so we would linger at the langar, and
and it's a great place to have conversations.
Oh yeah, we ran into a couple.
100%. On the top corner, you see Sufi dancers, and it still blows my mind how it works. So I had the opportunity. This is the first time in my life to watch Sufi dancers. And I ended up talking to one of the Sufi dancers afterwards, because Sufi dancing, Sufism is the mystical form of Islam.
Right.
And so what a Sufi does is they're whirling dervishes. There's music playing, and they're moving faster and faster and faster in a circle for 2, 3, 5. I think the longest I've now seen is roughly 8 minutes of twirling, like fast twirling. And I don't know about you, but I remember way back in the day putting my head to a baseball bat, spinning around on it, and then trying to run a straight line. It doesn't work. I'm on the ground. So I went and talked to one of the Sufis, and I asked, how?
Yeah.
Like, how do you do this without, getting so dizzy you wipe right out? And it was explained to me that with practice, this is achievable. And the whole point of it is, after a few moments, the distinctions around you blur. The colors blur, the shapes blur, and everything now has a practical feeling of oneness as it all kind of gels together. Like, oh, well, that fits the mystical mood of Sufism. And on the very bottom, there's an interfaith group. And by the way, the little guy in the middle with the beard, you see him. You see the guy with the mask. He's a Jainist, and of course they don't want to kill even any microbes, so that's why they're wearing the mask. Pretty much all of these people in that bottom picture, you will see them at other interfaith events as well. This is like their own little cadre right here. Really interesting group. There's been some some undercover or investigative work done on this little group and how they kind of operate, not just inside the Parliament, but beyond the Parliament. Other pictures, on the top corner picture, if you see some feet, black jeans and white sneakers, that is Don Vinot taking photos of the angels.
The angels are there.
That's right, the angels coming in. And on the other side, there was actually guys, or I guess there were guys, people dressed in black robes. And there were angels walking in one side, the black hooded robed figures walking in on the other side. I should have ran across the street to take a picture because it was just, it was surreal, totally surreal. Tibetan Buddhist doing a sand mandala, which is all about building a house for spirits and then eventually releasing those spirits. And it's all done with tiny grains of colored sand. The top picture with the lady with the orange books, she is an omist, and there is kind of a community of religions being built in rural France, where all the faiths are supposed to be represented, or at least all the major faiths, and there they can experience their oneness together. Each faith distinctive, yet operating in a wholeness. And the bottom picture was live visionary art that was being painted with different symbols, and of course the meaning being, again, the sense of finding your transcendent self, your visionary heart. A few of the workshops I attended that year: Role of the Divine Mother in Religion and Interfaith Interspirituality. Again, you couldn't get away from Mother Earth. She stalked you wherever you went. Recovering the Sacred Earth. One of my favorite workshops was We Are the Earth. Pagans respond to Pope Francis on the environment. That was a cool one because that year, of course, Pope Francis had issued his encyclical on the environment, and the pagans had also issued a declaration. And so they began by quoting sections from each document, but not telling you what they were quoting. And then as they were done quoting back and forth, they said, "Can anybody tell the difference?" No. And that was the point. And it was explained that no, Pope Francis isn't one of us, but the worldview represents the same ideology that we hold. And you constantly heard the refrain that we're all one with life, or we're all one with the one. The sense of oneness was constantly being stressed. Chief Paulette, in his talk, said this: "What is sin? The greatest and the biggest sin that man can make is to abuse Mother Earth." And then at the women's plenary, and I don't know, Dawn, if you were at the women's plenary, I was pretty close to the front. Just a itty bitty speck of testosterone in an ocean of estrogen, as we had thousands of women, and it was pumping wild. Marianne Williamson, a major New Thought leader, gets up and she has a rousing speech, and I can't mimic her, but it was dynamic. She was dynamic. And as she was closing off her speech, she said this: "A divine goddess is not just beautiful, she's fierce. And when you mess with her babies and you mess with her earth, she's had enough of that. And we're here on her behalf. You know what to do. Go do it." And as she said that, the place literally exploded in feelings. And I had one woman beside me jump up, and she was fist pumping in the air. I had a lady to my left on her knees weeping. Somebody yelled out, "Marianne for president." And then that was repeatedly circled through the auditorium. They had a group of drummers called Sheroes, S-H-E, and then heroes. Sheroes, and they were pounding their drums in the background. It was very interesting.
You were the lucky one to see it all.
I was, yes. And I already recorded and took photos of what was happening, because nobody's going to believe you. It had a very, how do you say this? The feeling of the whole thing was
very
almost tribal, almost tribal. Yeah. To the workshop I attended on asking the question, are we really all one? I won't read all this, but I'll just give you a snapshot of it. So we have in the room about, I don't know, 200, 300 people. It's a big, big room, and it's pretty well packed.
Mm-hmm.
And the moderator, who's a historian on Eastern mysticism in America, opens by having everybody go into a meditative state.
Mm-hmm.
And then he asked everybody in the room if you could just come up with a word or a phrase that reflects your first religious experience, regardless of what faith you're from, because here in the room we have Christians, we have Buddhists, we have Hindus, we
Yeah.
have pagans. And so after the meditation, people started to shout out joy, transcendence, unity, peace. And after a while, he stopped and he said, to the effect of, look, it doesn't matter what your dogma is, it doesn't matter what your doctrine is, it's what you've experienced, it's what you feel. And that was the point of asking the question, are we really all one? So go back at some point when this is put back up on YouTube and read through this. It's quite the statement. It's the idea of experiencing our oneness. I don't know, Donna, were you at that workshop?
I was not.
Okay, because I know you went to a bunch as well.
Yeah, a lot of workshops. Plus, I spent most of my time kind of talking with the Wiccans and the Satanists and the.
Yeah. Those are the fun ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a bizarre experience at the 2015 event. I was walking across the exhibition hall, and this guy came towards me, and he looked really familiar to me. And I must have looked really familiar to him. And as we're converging, our eyes are locked, and there's a smile on both of our faces as we both realize we recognize each other. And we stopped. We shook hands. How are you doing? We
Was it Bill Hansberger?
No. We were both wrestling with generalities. We both realized at the same time that we didn't know each other at all. And so in the most awkward way possible, we basically just
okay, bye.
Said, have a great day.
Yeah. Nice not knowing you. Oh,
yes, it's been a pleasure not knowing you, and hope you do well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the human experiences, right? We're humans.
Yeah.
Oh,
So there are two things I want to just jump in here with. One is back to the caffeinated cruise question on how often and why, and it is this: the Parliament is working on becoming the religious ambassadors for the UN.
Yes.
They've even crafted their own, chaplaincy outfits, which are really quite wild. I won't show them to you tonight, but so that's one aspect that's a really important thing. That's why they're doing this, because Muller did believe you can't have a one world government, and he wants a one world government to be the UN without a one world religion. So that's what ties all of these things together. The second is when you're talking about Mother Earth, that was not really that present in '93, but by the time we get to 2015, they actually had stations where you could leave love letters to Mom. You could write letters of apology. We treated you so badly. Please forgive us. All that kind of stuff. Now I don't know how they got them to her, but it was interesting. Okay.
Same as like writing. Yeah. Same thing like when you write letters to Santa Claus. How did they get it there?
They just burned them. No, they just burned them. So this is the agenda book for the one in Salt Lake City. It's got dozens and dozens and hundreds of workshops. All of those are workshops or presentations you can go to.
Wow.
My goodness, we would have to, as a team, probably clone ourselves half a dozen times or more if we wanted to cover everything, because it is so extensive. That's happening.
Right.
All right, back to the slides. Oh
yeah.
These folks.
5 minutes fluff.
Yeah, quite interesting. This gentleman stopped us. I'm not sure who was all with us at the time. He gave us little cards, like a 3x5 card, and pens, and had us write down anything we wanted on these cards. And the girls, one was his daughter and one was his daughter's friends, uh, had their eyes closed. There was cotton balls placed on their eyes, a mask to keep their eyes from opening, and then their eyes were wrapped in scarves multiple times. There's no way they could see, and they're not like hiding, or pardon me, they're not like up on a stage, hidden away from the crowd. We're right there in the in their space. I get on my hands and knees and look up, and could I see that they were peeking, or are there earbuds? None of the above. So what the guru had us do was, like I said, write down anything on a piece of paper. I wrote down John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And then the girls would take the cards, and then each time would read them word perfect. They'd put it to their head and read it, or they'd hold it out a little further and read it, but every time it was word perfect until the father flipped one of the cards upside down or backwards or something, and the girl was having a hard time reading it, and she was unable, and she said, I think it must be backwards or something. Later on, I talked to one of the girls, and I'm asking them, how did you do this? Like, how? And she explained that they have undergone years of very, very intensive training, yoga training, so that they could open up their crown chakra and see with their third eye from the spiritual into the physical. I asked the father if he could do that, and he was saying no, he couldn't. He could see colors, but he couldn't read words, and that this was something that children were more apt to be able to cultivate rather than adults. It was a strong reminder that there is a spiritual reality.
Oh yeah,
an absolute spiritual reality.
We saw something similar in the 2018. Remember that?
Yes, James. In fact, those are the same girls, except growing up a little bit more.
That's what I figured.
Okay. And at that one, at the 2018 Parliament, they were looking into your eyes,
they were
reading your body language, and then giving you diagnoses of your illnesses.
Yeah. It was like a consultation.
Yeah, a little more. Yeah. A little more vague than reading a full note. Eyes closed, but
it's still good though.
Yeah. It attracted a lot of attention.
Oh yeah.
And then 2018 in Toronto.
Woohoo!
Yes, it was a big event as well. Some of the people who were involved, this isn't by no means exhaustive. The list is extensive. But having this list up here, and we won't read it, I'm not going to go through this, but just to give you a snapshot of the personalities involved, and that these are not just religious leaders. These are political players. These are people from the international community. These are advisors. These are people from the United Nations, from the Club of Rome. In many respects, the Parliament of World Religions is this bridge, as Don, you were talking about, this bridge that Muller had envisioned between the political and the religious. And a few pictures from the 2018 event. Again, a red tent temple because we have to celebrate your flow.
I skipped that one.
Yeah. And it was a little bit harder to find.
It was, but I saw it in the distance.
It was. I found it. It was a little harder to find, but it was definitely there. I watched as a peace dance just spontaneously kind of broke out.
Oh yes.
I've seen it now a couple of times, and then there was a little altar on one table with readings from different religions, talking all about how, of course, it doesn't matter what religion you are, you're all part of the oneness.
Oh, part of it, yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm mistaken, Don. At the 1993 Parliament, paganism, Wicca, and witchcraft were basically brought on stage and given a platform, realistically for the first time, giving them kind of a sense of legitimacy within the religious community. Is that correct?
That was really, in 93, that was really an important aspect. The Covenant of the Goddess, which was at the time the largest of the Wiccan groups, was there, and although they were kind of well known in the Wiccan community, this is the first time they sort of got legitimacy on the main stage.
Okay.
The Fellowship of Isis, as it turned out, got more of the screen time, if you will, on stage time, which irritated the Covenant of the Goddess group, but they had better costumes for the women.
Oh, well, there you go.
Right, and so you always knew where they were at because you would have this trail of guys following them all over the place. Pretty interesting. So the covenant of the goddess, out of exasperation, decided to do a drawing down the moon ceremony to at least get in the newspapers.
Uh, there's oneness for you.
Oh, well, the reason I'd asked to clarify if that was a correct assessment or not was because ayahuasca, as you saw in that picture, was brought up on stage during one of the plenary talks as a legitimate religious
Right,
expression.
right.
And so now ayahuasca was for the first time being given a platform, from what I understand, at the international level, saying we recognize you. We affirm that you are indeed a religious movement. And if you don't know what ayahuasca is a tea, a substance that you drink, combining the elements from two plants found in the Amazonian forest, and it unlocks DMT, and DMT, of course, being a molecule that brings about a visionary state of being, and you will now have conversations with the plant beings, with the elves, with the mother goddess herself. You'll have conversations with plant spirits, and I've been in enough workshops where ayahuasca has been a part of the worldview, especially at Burning Man. It's quite often talked about. Hey, we went to an ayahuasca journey. We flew down to Peru. We had a download. We had new ideas. The entities spoke to us. We came back to Silicon Valley, and now we're enlightened. I can't remember if it was where it was. It would have been it would have been at Burning Man last year when I was at a workshop where a shaman was saying how ayahuasca now is so important that they fly, I'm not sure if it was weekly, but it was routinely, regularly, more than once or twice a month, that they would fly up from the Peruvian Amazonian jungles, that they would fly. Of course, they don't live in the jungle anymore. I mean, they've got more cash than that. And they would come up to Los Angeles and San Francisco to do special ayahuasca journeys.
Right.
With the elites in those cities. So yeah, there we go.
It's kind of interesting at the Paganicon. I think it was last year. I went into the one where they were teaching on shamanistic travels, and the best ways to do that, the best kind of drugs to take, if you will, or different ways you can do it. But the one that was leading it said that you need to call on a friendly spirit to guard you when you're on this journey, because evil spirits might do bad things to you. And I thought that's really interesting, because in the church where we have contemplative prayer, they're not warning you about evil spirits that could take over your body.
Right.
Isn't that crazy?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. And this brings up the whole realm of pharmakia, which is not just simply pharmacy, not just simply drugs. People equate that automatically to the medical community, and they can have that connection or connotation to some extent. But it really is about the use of a substance, a medical substance, in a ritualistic sense, in a spiritual sense. And that is what we're living in today. My goodness, we have a renaissance, an explosion of psychedelics. We'll be talking about that in a couple of minutes when we jump into the 2023 Parliament. All right, back to the slides. Perfect. And I'll just skip ahead. Oh, Jim Wallace. So Jim Wallace at the Toronto Parliament. Okay, so it was during the U.S. midterm elections, and golly, keep your politics out. You're in Toronto, you're in Canada, but American politics landed front and center of the Parliament. And Jim Wallace talked about how the midterm election was a battle between angels and demons. And if you were on the side of Trump, you were on the side of demons, and the evangelicals had sold their souls for power.
Yeah.
It was raw, it was harsh, it was unloving. Uh, but why should it be loving? Well, it should have been loving because the theme that year was the promise of inclusion, the power of love. That was the theme for that parliament. But throughout the parliament, we found out that there's no room for exclusive truth claims. Nationalism is the greatest threat. The uniqueness of Jesus Christ is downgraded. Free market capitalism is immoral. We heard this over and over again.
Yep.
Speaking about love and inclusion, again, that actually is a theme. Love and inclusion. Promise of inclusion. Power of love. In this picture, we have a Baptist minister who is using the Buddhist San Mandela technique to create an image of Kali, the Hindu deity of death and destruction. And in Kali's hand is the severed head of Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh. And the heads of those around Kali's belt are those who confirmed Kavanaugh.
Right.
It was grotesque.
Oh, yeah.
When it was done, I've got this on video because we were filming it. They did a dance song invocation calling on Kali to come forward and bring justice to the evil people in the Supreme Court and the White House.
So here's an interesting side note to that. While she's doing that, is up until that time, every time we met with Wiccans and we were talking about their spell casting, they would always assure everybody they're just good spells. We do not do evil spells. This year, they were casting evil spells. They decided they could make exceptions in certain circumstances like this.
Yep. Lovely.
Power of love. Oh, yeah.
Love and inclusion.
Oh, yeah.
I did not go to this one. I was at another workshop talking on some very similar themes. There was this was definitely a theme popping up. What do we do? What do we do with those exclusivists, you and me, who don't fit, who won't come? And it was recognized that the exclusivists, evangelical Christians for the most part, are the greatest challenge and the greatest opportunity. I have the audio recording of this session, and I broke the audio recording down this way because there was a section in the presentation where it was very clear that it's about now making inroads in evangelical churches. And so it was basically in 4 parts, and this is just simply a distilling of the suggestions that were being made. And one was, when you're making contact with an evangelical church, as an interfaith leader, you don't approach the lead pastor.
Interesting.
You spend time building relationships with the associate or the youth pastor, simply because the lead pastor probably is more set in his way. And the youth pastor probably in relationship may be more interested in a progressive path. Then you frame the interfaith agenda within the acceptable language of community development and social justice. You leverage Bible verses in a way that appeals to a wide sense of love and acceptance. Then you have the younger junior pastor meet with his equivalent from one faith only. You don't bring more religions into the mix until 2 faith leaders have had a relationship solidified. And then you can begin to build out on that. And in the process, you are at that point breaking down your churches, or that target church's position on the exclusivity and uniqueness of Jesus Christ.
Yep.
It was a workshop based on how can we break down the evangelical community. That was the bottom line. The workshop that I was attending, again, I got the audio for this, and I think, Don, you were at this one. The workshop I was at had 4 main speakers also talking about the problem of evangelical Christians and how they're just not coming to the table. And how are we going to bring them up on board? And at the end of the Toronto Parliament, Larry Greenfield, the executive director of the Parliament, made sure to tell us that this was about salvation. And he closed his talk by repeatedly making statements like this: thanks to all of those who are committed to the salvation of the earth.
Yep.
And you couldn't help but walk away going, oh, this is an alternative messianic claim.
Absolutely. Right.
That's what this really is. So the 2021 Parliament, which was virtual, it was a big event in terms of its virtual reach. It had over 500 workshops and sessions. I believe something like 3,000 people participated. I was able to videotape some of the sessions that I sat through. Audrey Vanderklay also did as well. She was monitoring the event too. And it didn't matter what page you're on in terms of your religious position, whether you're, Baha'i or a Sikh or a Christian or a Wiccan, you all were saying the same thing. All spiritual paths are equal. Climate change, carbon tax, we got to pay our fair share. We have to shift values. COVID demonstrated our interdependence. This came out so much. We have to rebuild the world's economy by replacing capitalism with a new order. We have to empower the United Nations, and we preach oneness, that God, man, and nature are essentially the same. So quickly, we'll take a poke at the 2023 event back to Chicago.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, and I won't talk about the mess that the registration was all about. It would suffice to say that the lineups lasted for hours.
Wow.
Until the opening plenary started and they had to actually release the hordes because otherwise nobody would be in the seats. It all had been still in the lineup for registration. When you screw up in the logistics of an event like that, you feel it. So these are some of the speakers. Antonio Guterres, UN Secretary General, gave us a video feed. Marianne Williamson was there again. The mayor of Chicago was there. That was interesting because, if my memory serves me correct, the mayor of Chicago basically booted out somebody else who was supposed to be speaking at that time. Some animals are more equal than others.
Yeah.
And he had to have, that's right, he had to have his 2 cents in the mix.
Yeah.
Michael Beckwith from the New Thoughts, one of the more important New Thought leaders, Richard Gore, was there. And Nancy Pelosi finished it off with a video feed, especially just for us at the Parliament. Yay. Some more pictures to give you a sense of what you would see. Another red tent. The fellow holding up the Peace Vigil sign had a long conversation with him. Jeff, do you remember him? I think Mark and you and myself sat and had a long talk. Yeah, shaking your head. Yes, yeah.
He had a lot of wisdom. I remember that.
And he had a lot of miles on his feet. He literally walked around the world.
Ooh.
It was crazy, holding up this sign for world peace.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Some pictures from the exhibition hall. Ask Jesus. You could hold up your telephone and you could connect into an AI Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
I thought this was quite interesting. At this specific booth, you had a banner held up for the sex goddess, right alongside a poster for a book on Jesus for a digital age, written by a very progressive author. I do have a copy of the book. Other pictures: 10 principles for climate repentance. We talked a little bit about that last week. That's where this came from. Pardon me, it was presented during the COP event in Egypt, but now the idea of it was brought to the 2023 Parliament a couple of years later. The exhibition hall is remarkable because every 10 feet, you'll be rubbing shoulders with somebody from another faith, and they want to talk to you about their religion. They're selling it, or actually, to be more precise, they're giving it away. And so you can go around and you can have these conversations with people.
Right.
Selena Fox did she's on the top corner, one of the more remarkable and notable witches in North America, did a ceremony to Lake Michigan, I believe, and to Mother Earth with a plastic blow-up kind of earth ball thing.
I thought it was Tiny Tim's mother for a second.
Well, see, it serves a couple purposes. It's there for her presentation, and then she can take it to the beach and do a beach.
There you go. Yeah.
And so there are ceremonies, and at all these events, every one of these parliaments, there are ceremonies. There's rituals.
Okay.
You can go and observe. It's not just simply workshops. It's not just simply lectures or plenary sessions, but there's full-on religious experiences that are taking place. And again, There are hundreds of events happening as the week unfolds. You can't cover them all.
Mm-mm.
Speaking of a ritual, the cosmic mass. And yes, Matthew Fox, he's the guy on the one side. It's his show. And so the cosmic mass is an eclectic ritual experience. Our little group, Bill Hansberger was there, Mark was there. Jeff, you were here somewhere, but then I lost you after a while.
Mhm.
James, you weren't at the 2023,
No, I
were
didn't
you?
go.
No, you missed, man. You
I
missed.
wanted to, man. Oof.
Yeah. And
No, he's there at every parliament. He does this thing.
yeah, he does. He always does the cosmic mass. And so it's there's circle dancing, there's cathartic screaming that happens.
I love that.
There's it's true.
I go. I hear them. I'm going to join them. Just like,
You can roll around on the ground, yelling and howling and
that's
yammering. Get it out of your system.
yeah.
The Wiccan who was opening up the cosmic mass was giving a reading out of Alexandrian witchcraft that mimicked or mirrored the Alexandrian cosmological perspective, which is that the mother goddess in the before matter existed, the mother saw the reflection of herself in the curvature of space and time and was filled with a holy lust. This is Alexandrian Wiccan's cosmology. Filled with a holy lust, she orgasmed and exhaled the universe into existence. And so as the cosmic mass was about to begin, this was the narrative we were being given.
Right.
Yay.
Yes.
So we had some really interesting opportunities to have conversations here. I had one lady approach me because, I mean, we're not taking part in the ritual. We're standing off to the side. We're videotaping it. We're monitoring. We're documenting. And hoping that there might be some opportunities for conversations. And actually, a lot of conversations ended up popping up. I had a lady, she would have been probably in her 80s, approached me and asked if I would participate with her because we were supposed to find a partner. And I'm like, I'm literally standing with my back against the wall going, I hope nobody comes. I hope nobody comes. Yeah, she came and she, came up to me and she's like, I want to be your partner. And I'm like, oh boy.
Oh, the sweet lady.
So, and she was really nice. And so we were all supposed to recite back to each other what we found to be sacred. And it was all about the sacred self. And so and being a guy, I have an advantage. And I said to her, ladies first. And so she did, because now my mind's reeling. I got to think fast.
Yeah.
What I'm going to say. And so she talked about how her partner now, I'm divine, I'm sacred, all this stuff. And I looked at her, it was my turn, because we only had like 2 minutes, a minute to have a little back and forth. And I looked at her and said, I'm going to tell you something different. And then I gave her oneism versus twoism. Of course, and we looked at that in the very beginning stages of our time together. Oneism being the worldview, that's this worldview, that man, God, and nature are essentially the same. Twoism, not dualism, but twoism is that God is separate from creation. And there's creation and then everything else. So I brought that in, and then we ended up having like a 3 or 4 minute conversation on the biblical view. And when it was all done, and I brought it right up to Christ is the one who is the way, because he's the author of life. And when it was all done, and I found she was from Delaware. Okay, she's from Delaware. That's important. She's not from a third world country. She's not from a closed nation. She's looking at me. She's going, I have never heard this in my entire life.
Right.
She's probably right.
I'm like, what? On another occasion, when again Matthew Fox asked us to find a partner or go around the room, look into each other's eyes, and tell each other you're divine. And again, I'm a guy who got my back to the wall, back into a corner, and going, I hope nobody comes. I hope nobody comes. I'm an introvert. I don't want to talk to anybody. I had 4 different women approach me. And again, I'm blessed because I'm a guy. I can say, ladies first. And then they would look at me and you're divine, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I looked at them. I used the same line that I gave to this elderly woman. Of course, but all we only had was literally a few seconds to make these points of contact. I looked into their eyes and said, "I will tell you something different. That you are a daughter of Eve." And then I would give them just a very brief little talk.
Mm.
And it was interesting. I had one woman break in tears and just whisper to me, "Thank you."
Whoa.
Because I wasn't going to affirm their divinity, because they're not divine.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I told them, do not put that burden on my shoulders. Do not put the burden of divinity on my shoulders. I
Right.
can't carry that, and you can't carry that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You will wear your life out in a ceaseless pursuit of trying to carry this on your shoulders. Stop. The yoke that Christ gives you is light.
Mm.
Quit putting the heavy yoke on your shoulders.
Right.
He's divine, not you. Anyways, a little bit of side, rabbit trailing here, but awesome opportunities to have
Yeah.
conversations. And it was a freaky, weird ritual that we were able to watch and go, yeah, that was just bizarre. And it was bizarre.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are difficult for me because I don't know if I could keep a straight face.
Well, you know something, James, to that point, you can. When you're in the midst, and Jeff knows this.
And the whole of it, probably.
Right, and James, you know it because of the stuff you saw
Oh,
in the
I know.
2018
Yeah.
Parliament, and Don knows this.
Yeah.
When you're there, it's serious.
Yeah. No, they are.
We're-
They mean it.
That's right. We're joking a little bit back and forth,
Yeah.
but there's not really any joking when you're there. It's a
No.
serious thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're committed.
Oh, yes.
This is their spirituality, and so you treat them with a level of respect and
Mhm.
seriousness as well.
Yeah.
And you want to bring a serious conversation about who is true into it
Right.
somewhere.
Right.
Yes. Yes. And that's the
Right.
gimmick
Because
of
that,
that.
ultimately, that's why we're there. Is
Yeah,
to
right.
get to the
Exactly.
point
That's the
of
point.
saying who's the truth as compared to what you think is the truth.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we
And
can share the gospel.
Right.
and the fact that you have that opportunity, you really do. Here's a place that's open if you
Mhm.
handle it the right way.
Right. And normally, by the time you've given them the opportunity, they usually will give you the opportunity and are willing to at least listen.
That's right, James.
Might not always agree, but you know.
Oh yeah. In fact, seldom did they ever have agreement, but
I know.
at least they were compelled now to listen because you've taken the time to listen to them
Exactly.
first.
Exactly.
The Chicago Parliament, I had an incredible opportunity. I had a lady I bumped into at a Wiccan ritual.
Mhm.
Jeff was with me. Mark was with me. I bumped into this chick. And then when we were talking to the guy holding up the peace sign, she'd walk by us and waved at me, and I'd given her a thumb up or something, or wave
Yeah,
back,
yeah.
or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then we went back to the cafe because there was a cafe attached to the hotel.
Mhm.
And there's Jeff and there's the crew all sitting. Bill's over there sitting. Don May, you've been sitting over there too. I can't remember who was all sitting over at one table. And to get to our team, I had to walk by this same lady that I literally bumped into, a shoulder check by accident during the Wiccan ceremony. And she looked at me and she goes, "What did you think?" And so I sat down with her, and we had an incredible conversation. I think it was like at least a solid hour. I
Mhm.
told her exactly why I was there, who I was, what it was about. I gave her the gospel. We talked about it actually from Genesis all the way up. This was her first interfaith event. She was blown away and greatly disturbed by how many United Nations officials were there.
Mhm.
And she had, because it was her first event, she had a hard time wrapping her head around why there was so much politics involved.
Mm. That's right.
She was not a Christian, but
Mm.
she was very quick to say that this reminded her of Revelation. That was a very interesting takeaway.
Interesting. Yeah.
And later on, as the conversation started to wind down, I told her I'd give her a copy of my book. But then I was thinking to myself, how in the world am I going to find her in a place of whatever, 6,500, 7,500 people?
Mm-hmm.
The next day, I ran out to my car. My car parked about a quarter mile away, half a mile away. I was literally underneath the railroad.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all splattered with hydraulic fluid when it was done. It was the cheapest parking in all of Chicago.
The pigeons.
There's a reason why.
Oh yeah.
I got a copy of my
But it was
book.
close to McDonald's too. So.
That's true. That's
Oh,
true.
there you go.
Yes. And I ran back out, to go look for her, and I'm like, I'll never find her. And I remember running into Trevor, one of the other guys from our team. I found him in the hallway somewhere, and Trevor wanted to talk to me about how he had some cool conversations with some people, and that's great. But I was at a point right now where my bladder is full, and I'm looking for a guy's room, and they're hard to find. I mean, this is a big, big place. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, gotta find this girl. I gotta find her. You know, and I had to break myself away from Trevor and go look for a little boy's room. As I see the sign for the potties, I'm kind of gotta go to the potty. I come around the corner and I bump into her. Like, I mean, we both go, oh. And I'm pulling out my book. This is for you.
Gotta
We
go.
have a short, we have a crazy short little conversation again. She's all thankful, and I think you give me a hug or whatever, and I vamoosed into the John and took off. And I thought, well, I'll never see her again. Nope. The next day, I meet her father, who had come into the city or was in the city, and her father's girlfriend, and I sat together with the other little around a table of the four of us, and had more conversations. So you have no clue. You
don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So to that,
opportunity.
to that point, remember, Don, when we met that lady from California, where she said that she had never been talking to.
Right, that was in Toronto.
Yes, 4 guys and she was not scared. That we were Christians.
Yeah,
first of all.
she was. Carl and I had been down watching the Indians doing
the ceremony. The
Old
opening.
McDonald's had a farm and whatever their dialect was.
Yes.
And it was raining, and then we came up, and James and Audrey, I think, and
No, her husband.
Brian.
and Brian. Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, they were upstairs.
Yeah, they're talking to her, and Carl and I came up, and I asked her a question about what do you believe exactly, and so then it sparked this discussion about she's agnostic, she's basically a New Ager.
Yeah.
The light is in me. I have the light in me.
I am part of the divine. That was her
I'm
thing.
part of the divine. And
what's going to happen to you when you die?
And then she did the big thing. She turned to me and she goes, "And what are you?" And I go, "Well, I want to prepare you. I'm so conservative I can't turn left when I'm driving even."
You looked at her
and she stopped, and I said, "I'm an evangelical Christian, born again." And she goes, and she stopped, and she looks over at James and goes, "And you?" And he goes, "Well, kind of the same thing."
Yeah.
And Brian, and well, yeah, kind of the same thing. And Carl, well, yeah, kind of the same thing. And she stopped her. She said, "I don't believe it. I am with 4 conservatives, and I'm not afraid."
Speaks volumes.
Yeah, why would you be afraid?
Yeah.
She said, "Well, I see on the news." I go, "That would scare you."
Yes. That's the first.
Exactly.
Now, they carried on a long discussion after that, and
Yeah.
I believe Brian and Audrey
We're
carried on the
emailing her.
discussion via email for at least several months.
Yeah. So she's one of those examples where, like you said, "Oh, I come here because I want to experience this whole thing, and part of, when we die, we're going to become back to being part of the divine." And she was asking us, "And what do you think? Or why are you guys here?" And we're like, "Well, we're here because of this." And that's when Don came in and all that. So it's just very. It almost seems like it's not planned, but I think
Right.
that God plans it.
Right.
I think you're right, James. God does
Right,
plan.
because she asked all the right questions.
Yeah.
She's thinking, well, you're a Catholic, so you go through purgatory. Well, no, we don't believe in
No.
that. So we actually got to the point of giving her the gospel probably a half a dozen times in the conversation.
In different ways, yeah.
Yep.
So it was very cool.
Those experiences, you don't forget them.
No,
They're
you
remarkable.
don't.
Yeah, absolutely. They're encouraging because you do realize that, okay, if anything, this is, even if we're maybe not changing lives, we hope a life is changed. It's actually the Holy Spirit who will be doing the work.
Right.
Not us. We're just the messengers. But if you can bring the gospel into a culture like this, into a situation like this, I think it's a great, just like going to Burning Man, bring the gospel there. It's a test case. Can we still bring the gospel forward in what is essentially a pagan culture? And if we can model that if we can model that in a little way in an event like this, I hope it's an encouragement to the Christian community broadly to say we can now all model this wherever we may be.
Yeah.
That's my hope. All right, back to the slides. We have to look at wrapping up pretty quickly.
Okay, and there you go.
Thank you so much. I won't talk about this. I'm just going to leave it up. If anybody wants to look at it later, they can. I'll just say this. Karina Gore, Al Gore's daughter. These were the people who were involved. Rob Fore, Sue Ernester, and they were all representing a major, like, I'm not talking like hundreds of thousands or millions. I'm talking major money, billions of dollars of church faith-based investments. I didn't even know churches did this. Mainstream church investments into the petroleum industry. And the conversation was how we could now work together to cooperatively break the global market if we all moved our money at the same time and shut down the petroleum industry. It was a wild conversation because you walked away from there going, all right, they're talking of they're talking in terms of a practical plan to undermine and destroy the petroleum industry, even to the point of already working with some banks to begin divesting out of the petroleum industry. The workshop that was just filled to capacity was when Richard Rohr and a handful of others talked about plants and fungi, not fun guys, but fungi. Having an enlightened experience through the use of psychedelics. This is one of the takeaways. This is actually from the recording of the event. Once the whole world becomes sacramental, when things like psilocybin come along that we make use of it, like we make use of bread and wine and oil and water, I think the experience I've witnessed and experience in plant medicines precisely fills this description. It shouldn't be seen as something negative or heretical or scary or wrong, because what is given to you is clearly in the realm of grace. If psilocybins are going to offer us a new avenue or way to be granted a unitive, non-dual spiritual experience, then we would be stupid to not get out of the way. So here we were told about how psychedelic spirituality is entering seminaries and how they're pushing it within chaplaincy programs, because we have to institutionalize the psychedelic spiritual experience. A week and a half later, I'm at Burning Man, and I'm at a progressive Christian camp where they have a workshop on Jesus and psychedelics. And now I'm hearing from Methodists, Episcopal, and I think a Lutheran and a Baptist minister, how their use of psychedelics allows them to now feel agape love and feel Jesus and have a new way of viewing Scripture. So on the one hand, at the Parliament, we were hearing the institutionalizing of psychedelic spirituality and how we would like to bring that into the Christian community. A week and a half later, I'm hearing the justification of it and how we're going to justify it at a personal level. So it was a really interesting dovetail between those two workshops.
Yeah, and Rohr was very vocal about the need to recognize psilocybin as another sacrament of the church, so you could have communion and your psilocybin sacrament at the same time.
It's back to Timothy O'Leary, who talked about LSD as being a sacrament, and very much use it in his work on spiritual democracy. Crazy stuff. We're full circle back to the 60s, except maybe now a little more cunning when it comes to it.
Yeah.
Back to the slide.
Right. In the 60s, it was just for fun.
Right.
Now it's business.
It's
serious. Religious experience. And
Absolutely. Alrighty. We'll look at closing up pretty quick. We're almost to the end. But what was interesting was over and over and over again, the problem of us Christians, the problem of conservative politics, the problem of republicanism. We're told repeatedly that Trump is the closest thing to an antichrist. Well, if you take a look at how the world right now is not happy with Trump, he's pretty much failing in that regard. The problem of right-wing misinformation, we heard this repeatedly, how Christian AM radio has damaged democracy, speaking specifically of Rush Limbaugh. the problem of white Christian nationalism, how Russia has become the leader of the Christian right, and how the Christian right is connected to Russian disinformation. Now the Christian right supports authoritarian rulers, despots, and fascism. We heard that repeatedly every day. And by the way, that 2023 Parliament, its theme was a call to conscience, defending freedom and human rights. Defending freedom. Shame on you, evangelical Christians. So, as somebody who has observed the interfaith community now for, well, I think my very first one was back in 1998, 1999. It's remarkable to see how the language has changed. Back then, we were called fundamentalists, and we still had something to talk about with language like that. Yeah, I'm a fundamentalist in the sense that I believe that the Bible is the fundamental truth of God's word. And then the language changed to becoming exclusivist. Okay, we can still have a conversation, but it's getting a little bit more raw. And then 2018, the language had shifted remarkably, and it was used repeatedly. We are supremacists. That came through every single day. The language was intentional. And then the language that was intentional again in 2023, the shift had been made to we are authoritarians. And that was raw. And literally every day you were hearing workshops with that language. That word was being injected all the way through. Which leads us to the next question. Where does the interfaith community go next in terms of denigrating evangelical Christians? I think, and Don, you may have been in a workshop where they use the T word, but I think that's where it's going to go. We're probably going to be labeled that way.
Yeah, you're probably not wrong.
Yeah. So what to do with Jesus? We're going to be wrapping up really soon. What do we do with Jesus? This is from the 2021 Parliament, the John 14:6 project. This is from the workshop description. The exclusivity of this verse continues to be a malignancy on Christian theology and proclamation, further rendering authentic dialogue with other faith traditions very difficult. All who share an openness to discuss the problematic nature of John 14:6 are invited to join the conversation. The problematic nature. And then at the 2023 Parliament, and my apology for how the words got muddled up here, but anyways, intra-faith dialogue within Christianity. Within Christianity, that dialogue must address the elephant in our living room, Jesus Christ as the only way to salvation. This interactive session is designed to help participants explore difficult foundational passages and teachings and find alternatives to the pervasive exclusivist interpretations of Christianity.
How about that?
Yeah. So this is what we need to remember, that the God we serve is both inclusive and exclusive. He's inclusive in that he wants all to come to him, that all should come to repentance. We see that in 2 Peter 3. But it's his way. We see that with John 3:16. We see that with John 14:6. We see that with Acts 4:12. And so here's just a few pictures. There's Dawn and Bill Hansberger, Mark and Trevor and myself and Brian and Audrey. I don't have the picture from last year up, but I should, because then we'd have Jeff in there and a few others too. So it raises the question. The interfaith community does raise this question for us. And we know how the answer goes. Are we willing to stand on that answer? Because the interfaith community is the engine of progressivism within the religious movement and has its footprint firmly planted in the realm of politics as well. So I will leave it at that. Any questions as we are well over time? I'm sorry.
I have a comment and actually two comments. One is, as you pointed out in these workshops, and it was really, 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 really emphasized in 2023, that evangelicals and conservatives are like the demonic creatures of the planet. And so I would ask at the end of each of the workshops I was in, and sometimes it's hard to get called on because here I am in my fringe jacket regalia, my cowboy hat, and they were a little hesitant to call on me. But when they did, I would say, I'm interested, and maybe you can help me understand this. But you talk about being inclusive and accepting and embracing. And I notice you haven't included a single conservative on your panel discussion. Is there a reason you're excluding conservatives from the conversation? They didn't really like that.
You're just so divisive, Don.
Yeah, well, yeah, I am noted for being divisive. So but that's an important thing. We need to ask those questions.
Sure.
Do you really believe what you say you believe?
Yeah.
I forgot what the other thing I was going to say was, but that I think that was an important aspect. Is we need to be interactive, kind, as Carl pointed out. Ask questions. Don't make accusations. They're busy doing that. We don't really have to add to the cacophony of evilness in there. But it's important. It's an important ministry.
It is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
that's
if you
why
have
we
the,
agree with everything we say.
what was that, MJ?
We're inclusive as long as you agree with everything we say.
That's their
Yes.
definition.
Yes.
You're right.
sure.
Yeah.
It's an eye-opening experience to go to
It
the
is.
Parliament.
It is.
Um,
I was fascinated when I got there. I was like, wow. It was like the eyes, the ears, every part of your senses were just overwhelmed.
Or assaulted. Yeah.
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 And then
Oh, that's the other thing is I submitted a workshop that
that's right. You
in
did.
2023, and I had to figure out to write it in such a way that they considered doing it, because they actually know I'm conservative,
Yeah.
but they picked me, and it was on abortion. It was
Right.
are human rights for all humans was kind of the question.
Mhm.
And they let me do it, and I made my case for the humanness of the child in the womb, and I didn't cite any Christian sources. I used Hinduism and Buddhism and other sources so that they couldn't accuse me of, being a Bible thumper, which I don't really care. They had to argue with other ones'
Yeah.
religious views, so it was kind of fun.
That's great.
do you
Yeah,
have a
remember-
recording of that?
Pardon?
Did you get that recorded? Do you have a recording of that?
Yeah, it's actually on video. I can send you the link to it.
I'd like to see
I
that.
mean, the sound quality is kind of a little iffy, but yeah, we have it on our website.
Yeah, cool.
One of the other interesting things that, as Don and I were talking to, we like tandeming with the Wiccans because they're just fun. And Thea, remember Thea Thistlebroom? She actually, I think when she was telling us what she was going on and how she had come to be, she started to cry because I think she had been abused, and so that's part of a lot of these people.
That's what she did say. She was in a Baptist church, I think.
Yeah.
She became a Wiccan because it gave her power over her life, and it turns out she had been molested.
Yeah. So a lot of these folks, when you really come down to the core of why they're there, why they're doing what they're doing, it's a lot of it has to do with traumatic events in their lives, and unfortunately, nobody's been there to guide them to the proper one to take care of those traumatic, events in their life and to help them through it. So yeah, she was crying, and at the end, I asked her if I could hug her, and I think she said, "Oh yeah," we hugged. So it was really, really interesting, and there are a lot of those folks out there very, very needy. So
Right. In fact, we had her story, and then at the end of her story, she asked, as they often do, and what are you? So I did my so conservative thing.
Yeah.
And I think she thought I was saying I'm unloved or something, which I wasn't.
yeah.
So after I did an introduction, she looks at me and she goes, "Can I give you a hug?"
Give you a hug. Yeah, that's right. She feels sorry for him. Yeah, so it was very cool though.
Yeah.
What strikes me listening to all of this is the strength of the spirit of the age
Oh yeah.
focused on the rejection
Mhm.
of the exclusivity of the claims of Christ.
Exactly.
That is the
100%.
one thing you're not allowed to promote. And it's important, to experience this, to understand what it is, and to speak the gospel into that. But what strikes me is how this spirit of the age is permeating the evangelical movement,
It is.
Yes. Right.
especially the younger generation. And the younger it is, the more of an issue it has with this whole exclusivity thing. It's like we're getting away from that, and we have to do it a little more subtly. They can do it blatantly,
Mm-hmm.
but just like we absolutely cannot tolerate being rejected, and consequently we cannot present Christ as the only way.
Mm-hmm.
And the lack of comfort with that aspect of the gospel amongst younger evangelicals, if you haven't listened to them and encountered this, you would just be absolutely appalled
Mm-hmm.
that what calls itself and identifies as evangelicalism today completely letting the gospel slip through its fingers.
Right.
And the permeation of our own movement with this same mentality is something that concerns me greatly.
Yes, it does me too. Well, we have run way over, and I appreciate that. Carl, what are we doing next week so people can get prepared?
Next week, we'll be looking at chapter 13, which is on transhumanism, and it's entitled Machines of Love and Grace.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay, so should I download myself into my computer to participate, or?
If you feel, I'm going to emphasize the feeling. If you
Yes.
feel like you can become one with the fused sand that makes up the silicon, then yes,
Yes.
we'll all meet as avatars.
Digitize myself right into your.
Absolutely. Why not?
All right, we're
Yeah.
gonna
Alrighty.
sign off here. Good night,
See you
all.
later.
Good night, everybody.